Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. The postie has just delivered my copy of issue 458 of White Dwarf magazine, and I thought it would be a good excuse to talk about Blackstone Fortress because I don't really need any excuse to talk about Blackstone Fortress. But before I get into it, I'm going to say this right now, right up front, so I do not mislead anybody. Issue 458 of White Dwarf magazine does not contain any new Blackstone Fortress content. That is pretty much to be expected because Blackstone Fortress, as we all know, has reached the end of its narrative. The last expansion has come out and we're pretty much expecting to see it slowly dying off as we head towards Christmas. So yeah, it's not really unexpected that this magazine wouldn't have any new content for it. However, this was their bumper giveaway extravaganza issue where they did include a lot of free stuff, including physical cards for a range of their boxed games, and it really does feel like a missed opportunity. Despite the fact that Blackstone Fortress is at the end of its life cycle, it really does feel like this was a perfect opportunity to include at least a card for the game. They could have included the card for a new type of enemy, or maybe even the 2 cards that were for enemies that came in the Blackstone Fortress Annual for 2019. Something like that would have been great. It would have been a nice little addition for those people who still want more Blackstone Fortress. But unfortunately, that is not to be. I will just mention very quickly, for those people who are interested, what free stuff did come with this issue. Oh, and don't worry, I do have a bit more to say about Blackstone Fortress a little bit later in the video, but I'm on one of my little meanders. So, you get this card, which is for the new Talisman Adventures role-playing game. It's actually a spell that you can use in your role-playing games. And this is something that's really starting to be pushed quite hard, actually. Talisman as a setting, as a series of games. Obviously, you have the main Talisman game and all of its expansions. They've got, I think, at least 3 reskins of Talisman now. You've got Batman Talisman, Star Wars Talisman, Kingdom Hearts Talisman, and there's the Talisman Legendary Tales game, which I think is aimed at a younger audience. And now we have a role-playing game as well. So there is a spell included, which apparently is never going to be printed anywhere else. And it's a spell that can transform you into a mystical dwarf. Who wouldn't want that in their lives? There's a promo code for unlocking some new characters for the combat cards, the online game. I'm not really interested in that. There is a new Warcry promo card, and this goes with some new rules that are actually in the magazine. And it's for this is the Age of Sigmar reinvention of the old Bugman character. It's kind of like a descendant of Bugman and his famous brewery. He's got his tankard of ale with him there. So this is a promo card for Warcry to get some extra use out of that miniature if you picked it up. We have a new Gang Tactics card for Necromunda. It's the Ancient Vox box, a strange Archaeotech box with a hand crank on the side. Play this card when activating a fighter. When this card is played, decide how many times the activating fighter will turn the crank, 1 to 3 times. Roll that many d6, add the results together and consult the table below. Effects last until the end of the current round. On a 1 to 4, there is a Grating Harmony. All fighters within 12 inches reduce their cool checks by 2. 5 to 8, you get a Jaunty Tune. All fighters within 12 inches add 1 to their movement. A 9 to 12, the Clanking Cacophony. No fighter within 18 inches may be the target of gang tactics or skills. And then a 13 plus, it's a Jack in the Box. All fighters, including the activating fighter within 12 inches, must make a nerve test or become broken. There is a Titanicus promo card, which says Venerable Machine Spirit. Play this stratagem in the first strategy phase of the battle. The player chooses one of their titans that is not a titan of legend or side titan. For the remainder of the battle, that titan increases its WS and BS value by 1 to a maximum of 2+. In addition, it may be issued emergency repair and charge orders without the need to make a command check. However, reduce the titan's command characteristic by 3 to a maximum of 10+. If at any point during the battle the Titan fails its command check to quell the Machine Spirit, the belligerent result is automatically applied. Do not roll on the Awakened Machine Spirit table. That means nothing to me because I do not play this game. You also get a promo card for a new aircraft for Aeronautica Imperialis, which is actually a little bit surprising, really, because I didn't really expect them to still be pushing this game at this point. I thought it had somewhat dropped off the radar, and yeah, not really expecting to see much more of this game, really, but there you go. Here's another craft for it. And then, of course, this is probably not much of a surprise. The new season of Blood Bowl is out, the new box set is out, so they have included a star player card. It's a bit of a jokey one. It is Acorn the Squirrel. As far as I'm aware, Acorn is actually one of the little bits that you can add onto the new plastic Tree Man kit. So I'm not sure how many people are going to base that little character up and use him as a star player. This feels a little bit jokey and perhaps not necessarily going to get a lot of use. I don't know. People in comments can let me know. Are you going to base up your little plastic squirrel character and use him as a star player in your team? Finally, there are rules in the magazine for a small one-on-one skirmish magic game based in Middle-earth. It's recreating the scene where Saruman and Gandalf have their battle in the tower around the Palantir. And it looks half decent, and they've given you a little paper mat to play it on. If anybody's interested in knowing more about that game, I can do a separate video on it. But yeah, it's just a light throwaway sort of game, something to spend a few minutes playing if you want to try something a little bit different. But that's it in terms of your freebies. That's all your extra cards and bits and pieces. And like I said, nothing for Blackstone Fortress and nothing for Blackstone Fortress in the magazine itself. And again, just to reiterate, I'm not surprised by that, but it would have been nice. You're printing out cards, you're making new cards for your box games. It would have been nice to have seen something for Blackstone Fortress. The closest thing of interest, I think, for people who do collect Blackstone Fortress in this issue is there are some new Necromunda rules. And if we go and have a look at those, they have introduced rules for some new types of brutes. And if we, one is for an ambot, some kind of corrupted ambot. But if we turn the page, there is rules for a mutated Ogrin, and of course Blackstone Fortress players will recognise that Ogrin from the Traitor Command box set. So there are some rules for using that particular miniature in Necromunda, so an option to get a little bit more use out of that miniature, because the Traitor Command box set was quite expensive for the content you got, so it's nice to have an additional use for the miniatures, if of course you play Necromunda. But if you don't play Necromunda, that's not going to be of much interest to you either. So there we go, and it's as much as we expected, really. And it did remind me to go and check out what the current situation was with Blackstone Fortress. I did notice that a few weeks back, Games Workshop did get stock back in of the base game, so it went from temporarily unavailable to available again. My assumption was that they had withdrawn stock from high street stores, because the high street stores in the UK were being temporarily shut down as part of government regulations, so I thought they might have recalled all their stock so that they could sell it online instead. However, I have now seen some other independent retailers also getting copies of the base game. I will mention Element Games have it back in stock. Full disclosure, I do shop with Element Games myself, and I do have an affiliate link in the video description below, which is why I mention them in particular. Other retailers may also have it, and it may even have it cheaper, I don't know. But Element Games is a company that I always use and recommend. But they have stock at the moment, and it looks like they have a little bit more stock on the way, but not a lot. So anybody who is thinking of getting into the game, they do now have that option again. Having said that, most of the expansions are gone. It's very difficult to find the expansions now. The only expansion that Games Workshop has in stock is Ascension, which is the final expansion. And to reiterate something that I've said in lots of other videos, but anybody who's missed it, you cannot play Ascension if you don't also have Escalation. So you need the Escalation expansion and the Ascension expansion, because those are the two expansions that complete the narrative from the core game. And Ascension does use components from the Escalation box. And unfortunately, on the Games Workshop website, Escalation is still temporarily out of stock. Looking at Element Games again, They have said that they do have stock on the way, but at the moment, I don't know how accurate that is. That may be they do have something in the pipeline, or maybe they are trying to get some in the pipeline, but Games Workshop themselves don't have stock. And although they say temporarily, Games Workshop web store does occasionally go from temporarily out of stock to gone. So it is a little bit dubious on that point, and anybody who is thinking of picking up the base game and then hoping to get expansions, it's a little bit risky when escalation is up in the air like that, because as I said, escalation is required to play any of the expansions that came after escalation. So that's Ascension, Deadly Alliance, and No Respite. Deadly Alliance and No Respite are currently out of stock. I can't find them anywhere. I am sure there are independent retailers and small websites and maybe even bigger websites that do still have it in stock if you can hunt it down, but from places that I have been to, I haven't seen them. But regardless, if Escalation isn't available, there's no point picking up any of those later expansions either. So that's the lay of the land at the moment. The core game is back in stock. Ascension is still in stock. Escalation is possibly coming back into stock, but possibly not. Pretty much everything else is gone. Is it worth picking up Blackstone Fortress? I've said it before, I do think the core game alone is a really good experience. It is a lot of fun, but it is more fun when you add in the other expansions and things. Escalation and Ascension in particular add some really interesting things, although of course Ascension is very expensive, and a lot of people have, I think, refused to purchase that one based on a very high price of entry for it. But if you think you could buy the core game and just have fun with that core game, I do think it is worth it. You can always check out some of my videos on my channel to find out a bit more about that core game. If you're a person who really likes to have expansions, and especially if you're someone who wants all the expansions for a game, this is probably one to duck out of, because the chances of you being able to get every single expansion that was released for it at this point is very remote indeed. And of course, there is still no word of a 2020 annual either. We are closing in on the end of November, and I would have expected them to have announced one by now if they were going to do one. I'm still crossing my fingers, I'm still hopeful, but I have predicted for quite a while that we wouldn't get one, so it will be a nice surprise for me if one does turn up. And I've said it many times before, I am usually wrong, so I am hoping very much that I am wrong and we do get a 2020 annual, but I really would have expected to have at least had a tease of it by now, which we have not. If, of course, I find out anything else, I will share it on the channel. I'm sorry that I haven't got any more concrete information than this, but hopefully someone has found this a little bit useful. Thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you've really enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.